Hello viewers, welcome back to the channel. Now I'm joined again by Lee, a professional bike fitter, going to share some common comfort issues, and we'll start with shoes. I had no idea how important shoes are to bike fit.
Yeah, I mean, we see probably 9 out of 10 people have some sort of shoe related discomfort. Now, when you actually dig a bit deeper into the actual pain and discomfort they're feeling, it normally falls into two categories. You either get a discomfort or a hot foot on the side of the foot here, or sometimes there's a discomfort or almost like a nerve pain across the ball of the foot. These are caused quite often by the same issue with the shoes. Hot foot, or the classic kind of soreness or hot feeling down the outside of the foot or the lateral arch, is normally caused because that part of the foot is being compressed too much by the shoe. That's a classic indication that shoe is probably not wide enough for you. Similarly, problems with discomfort across the ball of the foot is often caused by similarly the shoe not being wide enough and it compressing the metatarsals. So all of the nerve tissue and venal system that run through this area get compressed, then that creates the discomfort that you're feeling. If you don't do something about that, that can lead into other things like Morton's neuroma, or plantar fasciitis, which, both of which can take a long time to get over. So in terms of how do you check whether your shoes are causing that, what we would normally recommend is simply pull out the insoles that came with the shoes, pop them on the floor, and then place your heel on the insole and put your full weight on it. Ideally, you don't want more than 1 finger width of your foot hanging over the shoe in any direction. So this insole, for instance, doesn't look too bad for me, albeit I'd be a little concerned with it being a little short and the toe box irritating my big toe. What we see a lot of is people coming in and looking like this. So you can see there's a lot of spillover in terms of width and potentially total length. If your insole looks like that, your shoes are too small. It's probably the most common thing we see is people with shoes that are not the right size, most commonly width, here in Northern Europe. Yeah. It tends to be less prevalent further south you go because foot width tends to get a bit narrower. So one of the other things that we see often is, even if people have invested in a decent custom insole, is that after time the insole starts to cause them some discomfort. Now this is often because over time the muscles in the foot have got used to that and potentially even toned up, so your medial arch will often lift up slightly over time as the muscle tones. Simple way to check for this is simply take your insoles out of your shoe, of whatever brand you're using, offer them up to your foot and flex your toe. With your toe flexed, which engages the windlass mechanism, you'd like to see no real gap here and even contact through the whole foot. One of the issues that causes the discomfort is if part of the insole is touching the foot but only supporting some of it and not the whole arch. That then causes little muscle build-ups, and you'll quite often get little lumps, like muscular lumps forming as part of the arch tones and the rest of the arch is kind of left wanting. One of the other causes of foot pain can often be you're simply not doing them up properly. Okay, and that might sound ridiculous, but bear with me. What we normally recommend, once you've put your shoe on, give it a little tap so the heel is firmly seated in the heel cup of the shoe. Then, starting at the front of the shoe with whatever enclosement system you're using, do it up to push the foot back into the heel cup, and then work your way back through the engagement system. It's essentially exactly how laces work. You're always starting at the front and pulling back. The other key thing is, especially with engagement systems like this, it's really simple to over tighten your shoes. A lot of people really just keep ratcheting them up until their foot feels really enclosed. All that's doing is reducing blood flow and potentially causing you issues further down the ride. What we'd normally recommend is you want to do your shoes up so they feel like a pair of trainers. It should be equivalent to the weight of a hand resting on the top of your foot and nothing more. Obviously, if you're going to do a little sprint to the village sign, you can give them a little ratchet up to start, like just beforehand, tactically, so people don't see you doing it. But then as soon as you've won that little sprint, loosen them back off again. Another common problem with lots of bikes today is that as standard, they're coming with fairly wide bars. That can be problematic because most of us aren't that wide. Ideally, your bars want to be shoulder width. These 44s, which is a fairly common size that you get on medium and large bikes, don't fit hardly anybody on the planet. I've seen 6-foot rugby players that would get nowhere near these. So, you know, perfect for gravel bikes where you want extra leverage and you're not sitting in the same static position for hours on end. But for road bikes, always try and go for bar width that is the same as your shoulder width. Okay, and that's really easy to work out. You simply need to hold your arms parallel, make sure that your thumbs do that, measure that distance, and that's going to be pretty close to your bar width. One of the key issues that we see a lot at the moment is with bicycle geometries increasingly getting longer and lower on most of the most popular road frames. That causes a bit of a problem because most of us are not doing the amount of flexibility work that the pros are. So one of the key things that we would recommend is if you're feeling very overstretched, or you're finding that you're always on the front of the saddle, or that you're always riding with your hands kind of back here rather than up into the hoods, your bike is probably too long or too low, or maybe even both. The key thing here is, regardless of what you want to do with the bike, you need to buy a bike that fits you properly, okay? So even if you want a race bike might not necessarily be the best bike for you. An endurance bike that fits you properly is going to allow you to recruit your muscles properly and get the power down much more efficiently than a race bike that doesn't fit you. So don't copy the pros, buy a big long 130 stem and slam it. Get your bike set up properly so it fits you, so you can actually get your power into the pedals. One of the biggest things people come in for to the studio is saddle discomfort. Now, most people that come in expect the first thing I'm going to do is replace their saddle with something more comfortable, which is really not the case. Often, and more often than not, the issue is not with the saddle, it's simply in the wrong place. It's either in the wrong kind of height, fore aft, or tilt. Occasionally the saddle can be the wrong type of shape for the position the rider's in. And that's another common misconception that we see, is that once they find a nice saddle for their road bike, they then will expect that that saddle will work on all of their other bikes, which isn't the case. The saddle needs to be matched to the position, most especially the amount of pelvic rotation. So the more aggressive your position, the pelvis is going to rotate more, so you'll need a different type of saddle than one where you're on, say, a mountain bike or a gravel bike when you might be more upright. One of the common causes of saddle discomfort can actually be your shorts. So there's a few key things to bear in mind. First of all, if your shorts are more than a year old or more than kind of 5,000 miles old, you definitely want to be looking at whether the foam in the pad has started to break down and lose some of its shock absorbency properties. You know, you can get very expensive tools to measure the amount of give in the foam, but we're not expecting you to go and buy something like this. Just use your common sense. Take a good look at the pad, prod it all over, check that areas are all the same kind of comfort, and especially if you've started to see wear marks or pilling of the material, probably time for a new pad. Secondly, with shorts, one of the causes of discomfort can be that your shorts are not the right size. Biggest issue we see is with people that are wearing lycra shorts but they're too big. What you tend to get then is lots of creases and wrinkles, and all of those cause areas where you're not getting next to the skin contact to the lycra, and you're going to create an area that it can kind of rub and chafe and cause discomfort. Also, if your shorts aren't tight enough, they're also not going to hold the pad in position, and the pad's going to move around, and then there's the potential for chafing there as well, which we don't want. Plus also over time, the elastic in the lycra can give, so shorts as they get older will get bigger, which again is, you know, if your shorts are starting to feel less supportive or compressive than they used to, time for a new pair. So one of the other key causes of classic saddle sores is bacterial infection. Now that's really where chamois cream comes in. Lots of people think that chamois cream is an anti-friction or anti-chafing cream, which isn't really the key purpose of it. What it's mostly doing is acting as a antibacterial barrier layer between your skin and this perfect breeding ground for bacteria. It's a foam cell that gets hot, sweaty, full of little nasties that want to get into your skin and cause infection. And that's what a classic saddle sore is, right? So it's an infected hair follicle or pore. So what we suggest is make sure you get a good chamois cream. Normally we would recommend something as thick as possible, because then you don't have to keep reapplying it, and make sure that the entire pad is covered. That's why normally we would recommend taking a small amount and rubbing it all over the pad before you put it on. If you've got particularly specific areas that get sore, you can always then put a little bit extra on there, but be really careful not to double dip. Also, for the ladies out there, please make sure you go to a female specific chamois cream, because this is pH balance, so you don't risk any yeast infections or anything like that. One of the other things that can cause discomfort on the bike is, even if your position is really good and you've paid attention to all the other things we've discussed, something as simple as your tyre pressure can make a huge difference to your level of comfort and grip and power transfer into the floor. So what we'd recommend is always just head to something like the Silka website, where you can pop in all of the details of the tyre size, your system weight, road conditions, and it will give you a good front and rear pressure to put into there. And that's really important to mention, that, you know, your weight distribution on the front and rear tyres is not the same. You have more weight, up to 60% more on the back wheel than you do on the front. So you know, your tyre pressures should mirror that. You're always looking for slightly more pressure in the back tyre, slightly less in the front, which also helps with grip through cornering if your weight distribution on the bike is right.
Well, there we go. Hopefully this video has been useful and interesting. Got any questions, feel free to drop them down below in the comment section. I'll put a link to Lee's website down below. You want to find out more from Lee himself, or make a bike fit inquiry. But thanks for your time, Lee. Been very interesting. I've learned a lot myself, so hopefully you learned as much as I have today. And hopefully you can cycle in a bit more comfort and happiness. Thanks for the video.
No problem.
Cool. Thanks for your time.
Cheers.